Hi, welcome back to another episode of Analyze Scripts, where we are going to dig into part 2 of our analysis of season 3 of The Bear. Whew. So if you didn't listen to our episode last week, please rewind a little bit and catch it. We get all into our analysis of some of the supporting characters: Tina, Marcus, Sugar, Donna. That whole episode about, ice chips and the birth, really intense. So we're going to keep yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, I don't think I did that when I was in labor. I can't remember. But this episode, we're going to focus on Richie, Sydney, and Carmi to round out our analysis of season 3. And it's going to be a doozy. I'm just going to warn you, it's going to be a doozy. This is like a really intense show, really intense season, a lot of intensity amongst these characters, and a lot of tension. A lot of tension, Portia.
A lot of tension between these three. You shared
In
a
particular.
hilarious reel that you made,
Oh my God.
filming Richie and Carmi yelling at each other, and then finally Sydney's like, "Shut the fuck up!"
Yes,
and you were like, "This is what it feels to referee children," and people loved it. It was so funny.
It is.
So that is intense.
Yeah. Before we get going even further, do you mind moving your microphone a little closer?
Sure.
I can't really hear you as much. I want to hear everything you have to say really loud.
Perfect.
But yeah, I appreciate that acknowledgement of that because those sorts of things take me a really long time. But I'm trying to figure out how to do it, and I really felt moved. So I was like, this is how I feel all the time.
You're like, I'm in it right now. And
literally. I also shared one of I loved in this season how they kept showing like Carmi breaking down the boxes and then later on Sydney and then later on a group of them. But it was like, this is also life and motherhood. I loved when Carmi was like, don't worry, I got it. I'll do it. No worries. No one needs to help me. No worries.
Yep. There's a lot of stuff with like the boxes, like, right. It was on like Carmi's non-negotiables, and then Carmi is out there, like, I think in 2 scenes breaking them down, and then Sydney's out there like getting literally buried by them. And it's just like, I think that speaks so to like something that's so not seen in the restaurant industry. It's like you get boxes every day and you have to break them down, and like somebody's doing it.
And like, that's so funny. Right?
I know that they're including it.
That's why I love this show, because it's like so intense and deep. And then there are these moments of humor that also like really touch on realities of the world and life and, what it's like to be a restaurateur. Just so funny. That's also what it's like to be a parent. I feel like maybe just a human these days with Amazon, like it's Prime Day as we're recording this.
Did you order anything?
No.
Oh.
Did you?
Yeah, I did. I ordered a couple things, but then I saw on TikTok that like Amazon like jacks up the prices like last week for the stuff, and then jacks them. And I was like, oh, like
that's what they do for like Christmas sales.
I know. I just was excited. Now I'm like really bummed.
You can still be excited. Okay. It's still a deal,
Still free shipping.
I feel like there's this never ending delivery of cardboard coming in the house that I can't just get on top of,
Yep.
Same with like never ending like piles of child artwork. Like you don't want to throw away, but like I have a whole closet of it.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the bear.
Richie.
Oh, what do you think?
Our Taylor Swift loving, emotionally growing, amazing guy. Like, yeah.
Put him on the cover of Time.
Yep.
Like, I love Richie.
He is just the sweetest person. I love the scenes with him and his daughter. He's so sweet. He's such a good dad. Like, I think he's wonderful. The conflict between him and himself about going to the wedding of his ex-wife. Like the inner conflict with Carmi and their fight, and like just neither of them like speaking to each other for literally the whole season.
That made me really sad that we didn't get a resolution.
I know.
And I can't even remember obviously I remember Carmi in the freezer.
Yeah.
And, Richie on the outside being nice to him, and then Carmi says something mean to him, but I don't even remember what he said.
Me neither.
But it makes me really sad that it hurt Richie so much.
Because I think they like, doesn't Carmi like kind of, he like is talking about Claire and wanting to apologize, but Sydney's like, that's not who I was talking about.
Exactly.
Like, you need to apologize to Richie.
Yeah, I know. And he just like, I just really was like yearning for a scene of them having that apology. And whether it's like, a warm embrace or just them both being like, yeah, yeah, it's fine, like in some
Right.
of their past scenes and prior seasons where it's like vulnerable and intimate, but like,
Mhm.
broy kind of,
Right.
or not broy, that's not the right word, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Um, but so hopefully we get that the next go around. I loved like at the very end, when they're going to the funeral dinner for the other chef's restaurant closing, how they were all so excited to see Richie
Mhm.
back. Like I just really loved that for him. And then when we saw even like the flashbacks, like with Tina, you see like his sweet soul.
Right.
Oh, I just love Richie. And like I
Yeah.
really at the beginning hated him. Remember? It's so
Yes.
hard to remember all the way back then.
He's a character that I think you just root for.
Yes.
Like, you see his flaws, they're there, they're very apparent, and then you see just his, like, his soul, like you were saying, like, you see his inner value system, and it's good, and I think
Mhm.
that's why, despite, just, like, him doing some, like, things or having, poor communication or what have you, it's like, you just want good things for him because he's a good person,
Mhm.
and I think though his fight with Carmi speaks to the, like, how families can, like, how conflict can lead to, like, no contact in, like, not a good way. It's just like
Yeah.
they keep going and they keep going, and then there's these opportunities where, like, Richie sees him at the funeral at the restaurant
Mhm.
and, like, sees him, but, like, they don't talk. Carmi,
Yeah.
like, will see him, they don't talk, and it's like you have all these opportunities to repair, and, like, you both are just, like, stubborn and hurt and angry, and, like, so you're not taking them, but it's like someone has to go first, like,
But
someone
I
has
think
to
it should
make the
be
step.
Carmi,
I do
right? Isn't
too.
he the one who, like, said everything?
Yeah, and he's, like, not well, which we'll get to, but,
Right.
like, I think just the stress and everybody
Mm.
wanting to do their best and just, like, the non-negotiables is really,
It
seem to be
is.
driving,
A
Richie
wedge.
mad,
Yeah.
and Sydney mad, and yeah, the front of the house versus the back of the house. That's like a restaurant trope
Yes. Yeah,
with
but it's,
people
like,
getting
true.
along. Yeah,
Yeah. No, it's
absolutely.
true.
Mhm.
I really also yeah, I feel like Richie is growing emotionally. I'm not exactly sure how, if it's just coming from confidence,
Mm.
and feeling good about himself, or if he is doing some kind of work, like in therapy or self-help. We don't really
Right.
see that. I would love to, but we do see his interactions with his daughter and his ex-wife.
Mhm.
Um, I think they were married, and like, when they're sitting on the bench and she's, telling him she really would like him to come to the wedding with, Josh Hartnett. Did you catch that?
No. I
Yeah.
like, zoomed right over me.
Yeah, her fiancé is Josh Hartnett.
Mm.
I mean, obviously, like,
Wow.
he's playing someone, but it's Josh
Yeah.
Hartnett. So I was like, "Oh, hey there. Hey,
Mhm.
you." I had such a crush on him in Pearl Harbor, but,
Mm.
that really moved me because I feel like that's gotta be really awkward and hard for Richie because clearly he
Right.
still, like, loves her.
Mhm.
And I also feel like she clearly, like, still loves him, but it's just, like, there was too much hurt, I think, to
Yeah.
come back from, and she's moving on. And it's, like, in some ways that I feel like that's paralleling Richie's relationship with Carmi,
Mhm.
except now he's the one maybe moving on or feeling
Right.
like the hurt's too much to come back from, perhaps. So
Right.
then I'm thinking, like, well, does that mean Richie then might give Carmi some more grace
Mm.
because he's been through it in this way, or is he not making that connection? Or yeah, I don't know.
His daughter thinking that he's lonely, really got to me, and I feel like he is, like, he's so busy, and he has
I
his
know.
work, but, like, who is he talking to in his personal life? And then I really liked the moment that he had with, his, kind of counterpart at Ever, that
Mm,
woman, and
mhm.
asking him, like, "How do you stay so passionate? Like, how do you stay connected?" And she's, like, kind of talking about how it's, like, not about work. It's like she surrounds
Yeah.
herself with really people who are, like, better and make her grow, like, outside of work,
Yeah.
and he,
Yeah.
like, really needed to hear that, and then I was like, "Is this, like, the budding of a romance
I
here?"
want it to be,
Mhm.
right? I want it to be.
Yeah.
I would
Yeah,
love
I'm
that for
crossing
him.
fingers and toes. And like, I don't know, I mean, they certainly left us thinking that with like her being at the
Mhm.
party then and them just being so sweet to Richie and like even the chef at Ever who was closing, when she
Yes,
sees Richie there and she like, sends him like a kiss. I was like he made such an impression
that's
there.
what I mean.
He
Yeah,
was so
he does.
vulnerable and they really just like saw him grow, and I think that felt all
Yes.
so good to them, and he, like it was, like, incredible.
And I think, again, just speaks to, like, he wasn't there that long,
No.
right? Like a week or
Mhm.
something. Of course, we're talking about the episode Forks from season
Yeah.
2, and again, kudos for everyone on their bazillions of Emmy nominations, well deserved. But he did leave a mark, and they left a mark on him too, and I
Mhm.
think it's just such a beautiful portrayal of what can happen when someone is put in the right environment, like a
Yes.
supportive environment where you have someone who sees you and sees your potential and is there to
Mhm.
nurture it. How much of a difference that can make.
Right.
And I was like, I wouldn't be mad if Richie kind of got together with the chef who's retiring. I can't remember her name right now.
Yeah.
Um, but that might be a nice pairing.
Mhm.
Like I just want everyone to find love in
And,
this
like,
series.
especially, like, Richie, like,
Yeah.
he needs, like, a win, and it's so nice to see him trying to promote, family and community at the restaurant, at the Bear with
Yes.
the front of house, when he's, like, trying to give his, like, spiel for the,
Yeah, it's so
20th night,
cute.
and Sydney, like, kind of helps him out because he's like, "I don't know what to say
Cute.
tonight."
Yeah.
Um, is just so nice because and then it's so opposing to, like, the kitchen chaos.
Yes. Yes.
And just like kind of the negative vibes that seem to be going on there with and then the conflict of that and then just the really going back and forth with conflict of like, oh, somebody dropped something and Carmi was like really upset, like out, in the front of the house. Um and just them moving planters back and forth and like it was just
I know. I
yeah.
love Richie, and like this conflict and tension between him and Carmi's killing me. And
Mhm.
I think it's like getting in the way of their business too,
Yes.
right? Like people
Yes.
are picking up on it. They
Yes.
can sense it. And I think they're also individually like distracted
Mhm.
by the tension and their feelings toward the other
Sure.
person. And the person stuck in the middle of it all is Sydney. Again,
Yes.
she's
I
always
know.
like stuck in the middle.
I know. And it's not a good place to be. I think you
Mm-mm.
have both of them can be explosive, Richie and Carmi. I think
Mhm.
Carmi is like feels a little bit more unreachable this season.
Mhm.
But Sydney is really, really struggling with this decision. She's being poached, by
Yes.
another chef who wants to start, a restaurant and include her. I think she is feeling kind of this whole episode, and you see her conflict, her inner conflict with signing the partnership agreement.
Right.
Just because Carmi's like, no, we're doing this, no, we're doing this, and she's not really getting a say. It doesn't feel
She's
like a
not really like a
partnership.
partner. Yeah.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah. Stuff with her dad, the move. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, again, I was like really happy for her for moving into her own place. I love
hmm
those big, beautiful windows. I loved that the final like party happened there. I thought that was, and that she was like so kind of embarrassed that all she had was waffles, but I just thought it was like so great.
hmm
And the whole season, we really see Sydney struggling with that inner conflict of wanting to stick it out
right.
and believing in it, and then also dealing with like how shitty it feels
hmm
to like be in this environment every day and not really, liking the way she's being treated. And it almost seems like sadly, like she's in the position Carmi was in when he was under the
Yes.
tutelage of the Joel McHale chef guy,
Yep.
you know, like maybe not quite as bad, but we see her now start to have panic attacks at the end, right? Like we see her have a panic
Yes.
attack. And it's like this whole environment is really driving her mad, all
hmm
the stress and chaos and feeling like, she doesn't have a voice.
Right. And I think what's hard is like she knows Carmi can be different and more supportive and more
Mhm.
balanced, but so she's seeing him really suffer. And I think that's why she's staying. You know, it's not like this terribly abusive peer, you know, only like we said, like in our part one, like he's not all bad. So she
Right,
knows
right.
he's really struggling. She's like trying to kind of figure out when to talk to him about it. She keeps giving him chances. And then with Ever closing, she just seems kind of Carmi falling apart. And I think that's that hesitancy to like, oh, if I leave, like it's
Will he
not
fall
like he,
apart?
yeah, exactly. And she doesn't want to put that on herself. So she's just in this really difficult position of trying to do what's
Yeah,
best for her. But I think she's putting
yeah.
herself like on the back burner.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think she's scared that, and again, now as we say it, as I was listening to you, Portia, I was feeling like it almost sounds like someone who's in a relationship with someone with a substance abuse problem,
Mm.
where like at some point it might get to the point where like for your own well-being, you have to leave or
Sure.
ask them to leave, even though you love them and you see the good in them. And like he does try to apologize in his way,
Mm-hmm.
and yet the environment's really unhealthy. She's having panic attacks. This other
Right.
opportunity was presented to her. But then again, it's like, is that other opportunity a slam dunk? Like, is she going to be happy there? Is she going to like it there?
Right.
Did she leave the whole family of the bear? Like, all of those people who've really become like her support system, her
Mm-hmm.
family? Like, I feel for her. I think it's a really tough decision.
Right.
And if I remember correctly, the actual terms of the other offer, like financially, seemed better,
Mm-hmm.
right?
I think so.
Like the salary was a little higher, the benefits and stuff I think were
Mm-hmm.
better. So again, it's like on the surface, it seems like what would be best for Sydney would be to go with this new
True.
opportunity. Do you think she will?
Well, I think we were stopped at a confluence of events such as the uncle having no money and
Yeah.
regardless of the review, right, like closing, I didn't read it and I
Can't
feel like
tell.
I couldn't tell if the review was good. I saw the computer had texted Carmi too, and his
What
uncle
do you mean
did, so like all
computer?
on his phone in
Oh, the
like the
guy
last
behind the computer.
scene,
Yeah.
right, like he it was like the Google alert for the review, the uncle's text, and then from the computer. And
And then like all he says is like fuck or
yeah.
something. And then
So
like
I was
it
like, "What
ends.
is it?" Like, did they tell him, like, "That's it, we're
That annoyed me.
closing?"
That
I
annoyed me that
know.
we didn't get it. I was like, "Come on."
But I
That was
did like that it
annoying.
said to be continued. Like, we were absolutely left at a cliffhanger, but, like, the other seasons, they just, like, ended, and, you know, it was like, "Is there gonna be season 3? Like, is there gonna be
Yeah,
season
so we
2?"
know there's gonna be another one. Hopefully, I mean, I can't
And
imagine there wouldn't
soon,
be,
like, I want
but
it now, but
yeah, like, can we have it in January?
I don't know what this will all lead, though, for Sydney. You know what I mean? Like, if she knew, obviously, that the bear was closing, like, she would obviously, I'm assuming, jump ship, but I feel like she feels
It
very
didn't even
loyal.
cross my mind that the bear
Mm,
was closing. Like, that did not cross my mind. In my
yeah.
mind, the review was okay to good, and they all scrap together
Mm,
and, keep going.
right.
I don't feel like the uncle wants to walk away, even though the
He
computer guy, the money guy is
Mhm.
telling him, like, "You should."
Yeah.
But I feel like he doesn't want to. He wants to, like, believe in him.
I know. I mean, I don't know what it's gonna come down to. It sounded like he doesn't have any money even to, like, continue regardless if he wants to. Um, because they said something around the lines of, like, he invested the $850,000 and, like, it's gone. Like, then he made, like, a bad investment, like, somewhere
Mhm.
else. So he has no money and
Oh.
he feels really bad because it's like regardless of the review, it doesn't matter. Like, they have to close.
Oh,
Um And so, yeah, like maybe they band together, they figure something else out. Like,
I can't imagine it closes. Like, what happens then? I hope that in season 4 we see, like, I think Carmi just keeps getting in his own way.
yes.
Um, do we wanna move into talking about him, or is there some more about Sydney that we wanna
I
cover
think we
before we
can move
get
into
there?
Carmi because Sydney might weave back into. I feel
Yeah.
like they all will. But
But I think, like, imagining, like, oh my god, in my mind, like, the bear is not close. Like, I didn't even consider that, even though I know I saw the final scene where he's
mhm,
getting all those text messages. I can't imagine their messages of congratulations
right.
now that I think about it logically. Why would the computer person text him? I don't
Mhm.
know. Um, but in my mind, it's like, it's not gonna close. But, um, God, what if Sydney turns down the other offer and then it does? I hadn't even thought about that, Portia. That would suck
I
for
know.
her.
I know.
Oh, I'm so stressed out with this show. This show really gets my, like, heart rate up. Oh my
Well, there
god.
was a meme that was like, "Oh, I wanna
Oh.
relax and watch some
Yes, I'm
TV.
gonna
I'll
watch
watch
The
The
Bear.
Bear."
I know.
Like, not relaxing at all.
I know. But
But
it's also yeah, but it also feels like it's one of those shows where it's not actually cathartic either.
mm,
Sometimes you're like, I need a good cry. I'm gonna watch, like, the
yeah.
saddest movie I can think of," and then you're like, "Okay, whew, got
Mm,
that out." This, I feel like, just stays with you,
yeah.
and you just, like, carry all the anxiety they're
Mhm.
feeling, and then, like, that's it.
Yeah,
And yeah, we all keep coming back.
we do. Did
So
you
good, but
catch the, when Richie and Carmi were fighting, he said, "Textbook sublimation."
yes, I did.
Um, that was so funny.
I loved that. Wait, who said it? Richie said it?
Richie said it about
Yeah.
Carmi.
Yes, and again, I was like, "So he's doing some work somewhere."
Yeah. He, like,
He's
knows
trying
these
to he's
things.
listening to analyze scripts, hope so.
Mhm.
Um, oh my gosh, so yeah, Carmy, Carmy, Carmy. If this is not, like, a magnificent portrayal of trauma, grief, perfectionism, OCPD, what do you wanna
Mhm.
call it? Like, just
Yeah.
amazing? Avoidance?
I think the OCPD part is what my mind was immediately thinking about
Me
as he
too.
becomes more and more obsessive.
Me too.
And, you know, like OCD and OCPD are two very different things.
Very
One is more
different.
just like personality based, the other one is more like stereotypically speaking, like right, obsession, compulsion, obsession, compulsion, like kind of the back and forth. But it's when it's a personality, it's just like it's impacting everything, and it's not as like 1 2 1 2. So he's with the menu changing every day, and like the him staying up all hours. I was nervous that he was gonna have like a psychotic episode from
Me
lack of
too.
sleep and
Mhm.
stress.
Mhm.
He's like a little older than right,
Mhm.
like
I thought he might
early
have a heart
20s,
attack.
maybe. Yeah, it's like he is suffering
Definitely still drinking the
immensely.
Pepto,
Yes.
I was really proud of him for quitting smoking. That is
Mhm.
very hard, and I really appreciated that they depicted how hard it is for him, and I think that's also contributing to his irritability, his
Yeah.
anxiety, his trouble sleeping, all of that. Quitting smoking or nicotine in any form is one of the hardest addictions to kick.
Mm.
It's like opiates is the hardest, then nicotine, if you can believe it. But there's a lot of help out there,
Yeah.
nicotine replacement treatments, other
Mhm.
medications that can help, but it's really hard,
Yeah.
especially I think in an environment like that where there's a lot of smoking, like in the restaurant industry, where you
Totally.
go take your break and the nicotine does like release those neurochemicals that lead to you feeling calm. So then when you start going without it, you feel like
Mhm.
extra irritable and on
Yep.
edge. And I'm sure that was affecting the way he was relating to everyone, but I was proud of him for
I
sticking it
know.
out. It's
Yeah.
impressive given all the stress he's under.
Yeah, I was like, bad timing. Not that it's ever good, but I was like,
Yeah,
you're literally doing this really hard thing
but
while
he would,
you're in chaos.
but,
I
like, he would.
know.
That's like him. That's his
Mhm.
personality, right? So, again, I feel like, the way I think about obsessive compulsive personality disorder, which you're right is totally different from OCD, is, we think of this as, like, one of the most neurotic types of personality types. A lot of physicians, fall
Mhm.
into this category, right? And it's like, if you can sublimate it, like Richie said, like, direct it in the right direction, like anything, you can, it can be like a strength in some ways, but it can also be really limiting as we see here.
Sure.
And I think of it as like, I love how we're seeing how Nat and Mikey all developed in reaction to their mom
Mm.
and having a mom with borderline personality disorder and substance abuse. We see Mikey, we still don't know a ton about his backstory, except that he also suffered with addiction. We see Nat becoming like a people pleaser, fawning a lot, like sort of always seeking outside validation. And then we see Carmi, I think, has a lot of avoidance strategies. He found the thing he's good at and thankfully is good at it and sort of full steam ahead in that direction,
Mhm.
and that's what got him like out of that toxic environment. But we really see that it's affected his ability to attach to other people, to connect with them. We see that with Claire. I was really
Yep.
glad she didn't take him back, I have to say. um and we see it like with Richie, the fact that he can't apologize, like he's just so emotionally and socially like stunted,
Mhm.
that he just really struggles to connect with people in that deeper way. He's also such a perfectionist.
Yeah.
And again, I sometimes see this happen, like in my practice, like people with OCPD type traits have had more chaotic upbringing, and it's like a way they try to always have control over
Mhm.
everything, right? That's like the premise of it, is always being in control and
Yep.
obsessively feeling like you need to be in control, whether that's about work, your finances, it's sort of about everything. That's really hard when you're feeling out of control. But then we see like he gets in his own way by making it so much harder, like changing the menu every day.
I
What?
know.
I feel like
I
that should be
know.
the concept for restaurant number 2 once
Right.
this one is successful,
Yeah.
right? Like that's, and Sydney was like, "What?
I
That's
know.
nuts." That's like, do are there restaurants that do that?
Um, I think
Maybe
so. I
really
think, like,
fancy ones?
really fancy, like, smaller, they don't have
Like
a lot
French
of
Laundry?
seating. It's not, like, as big as even the Bear. I think it's, like, smaller, and the Bear's pretty small,
Yeah.
that they have more rotating, um, menus, but, like, I felt, I wrote some stuff down about Carmy, and it's gonna be, like, just my kind of stream of consciousness, but,
Great, I love it.
um I think he has anxiety that he will have nothing to do. So it's like he has to make
Yes.
things, like, harder so that he always, like, has something to think about that he needs to get done with, like, deadlines. So he has to fill
Yes.
his time. He has a really hard time turning it off at night. He
Yes.
expressed this to Claire, that buzzing is impossible to turn off.
Mhm.
The hand wound I thought was a very interesting metaphor, where he says, it was so hot that it didn't hurt yet.
Oh, I
And I
know.
feel like that's not dealing with grief or trauma yet, right? It's
Yes.
so painful that you don't feel it until you have this big
It's
scar later on.
Yeah, he's so dissociated.
Yes.
Mhm.
Um,
And he's, like, keeping himself busy and anxious about all
yep.
these other things so he doesn't have to
Right.
cope with the anxiety and true trauma of the deeper wound.
Right.
And yet we see him, like, kinda going, right, to, like, a support group or
Mhm.
Al-Anon or something. He's, like, dipping his toe in. So I have
Yeah.
hope that maybe we'll get there, but it's
Right.
like, what's gonna happen to propel him there?
Yeah, and I thought it was so interesting that his, brain, when he's, like, going to a bad place, that it goes to the Joe McHale chef, and, like,
Yeah,
not to
his
the loss
mom
of Mikey or
or
to
the
childhood experiences with Donna. Like,
yeah,
I'm curious about that, and again, it's just, like, how we process things, it's based on where what we can process, so I'm wondering if, like, the other stuff is so much deeper and way too painful that he can't, but, like, this just, and I think he was abusive to Carmy. I don't think it's
for
just, like,
sure,
mean, but
for
it's
sure.
like this mean guy, that's what you keep bringing up with these panic attacks and trauma currently. I think it's
Mhm.
just interesting because I'd say that's probably, like, the top of the
Tip of the
iceberg, right, that you can
iceberg,
see.
yeah,
Yeah.
right, and also, like, we still don't know a lot about their dad,
Mm. Right.
right? So, what's up with that? Is that even deeper? I totally agree. I think probably a lot of the feelings he's feeling toward Joel McHale, again, what's his name? I
I
don't know. Joel McHale,
know.
the abusive chef. I think that is like a displacement
Mhm.
of his deeper feelings toward his mom, probably his dad, what's going on with Mike, the whole situation, his whole
Yeah.
childhood basically. But that's what's accessible right now. So like I'd work with that.
Mhm.
Like if he were seeing me, like I would start there
Yeah.
and work with him on naming, like, what are you feeling? Where is it
Mhm.
coming from? And does it feel like you've had this experience before? And I think it would take a really long time, depending on the type of therapy you're in. Maybe not, it just, and depending on his openness or willingness, but to get to the deeper wounds and to see that these are patterns, that are
Right.
replaying, that he's experienced before, but that he's tried so hard to avoid because he's so scared. But then
Yes.
it's like in doing so, then he avoids good relationships,
Right.
like Claire, like Sydney, and he
Mhm.
is self-sabotaging, like much in the way Donna does.
Mhm.
It's different. It looks different. It looks different. It's not driving a car through your house
Right.
or, drinking and then hurting someone. It is different, but he is hurting people
Yeah, his
and
need to control is, like, we see it just, like,
pushing everyone away.
escalating through this whole season, and, like, ultimately, we can't control a lot of the things, most things, and I think it's
Yeah.
terrifying, and even thinking about the OCPD, like, that is, you know, in part of the root, it's like you try to keep yourself safe and your environment safe because probably, you know, trauma in most cases. So it's like you become obsessive about things. You have, you know, a rigid way of looking at the world and expectations, and then you isolate yourself more and more and more and more and push people away. In just like he's gonna crash and burn, and I think like he is on his way. But another, we brought up just a couple of minutes ago with Richie talking about sublimation, he also says when he's talking about Carmi, this is classic behavioral dysregulation.
I
So
love
yeah,
all
he
his
has to be
words.
doing some work.
I love
But
his buzzwords. He's so cute. I
yeah,
love Richie.
yeah, but
Oh, I love
Carmi is
Richie.
dysregulated, and
He
it's like
is.
everyone then in the
And
restaurant
now
is
everyone is
too.
walking on eggshells around
Mm-hmm.
him, and everyone's
Right,
absorbing it around him,
right.
just like he did with his mom. And I think it's gonna break his heart to realize what's
Mm.
happening. And I feel like somewhere in there he does, but he's just like so scared and
Yeah.
stressed out to even go there. So he's gonna stop smoking.
Mm.
You know, like, let's focus on that behavior. Okay, great, great, great. Step one, you know, but I just like, I'm so worried for him.
Yeah.
He
Yeah,
seems
you
miserable.
he does, and I liked the, like, flashes. It was too fast to even read, like, of some of the reviews
Yes,
of, Joe McHale yelling at him.
I tried so hard, Portia, to slow that down and
Yeah.
read the reviews
I kept
100
pausing
million
things.
times.
But in there was also him yelling at his staff too, and so I
Yes,
think I would imagine, and I'm assuming that that was the point of the depiction, was like that's what's happening in his brain.
he's,
His
like, turning on his
neurons are
brain.
firing. I'm assuming has racing thoughts, intrusive thoughts, and he probably, right, working on a dish, perfecting a dish slows him down. It's probably very grounding. It's something to
Exactly.
focus on. So
But
we end
in
up
a
in
way
these
that's, like, getting
positions.
in the way.
Mhm,
Yes.
exactly.
And again, like we've talked about in prior episodes, it's like he is identifying with the aggressor, not
Mhm.
intentionally. He doesn't want to, but that is the type of behavior he saw modeled, you know,
Yep.
with his mom, probably with his dad, although we don't know a lot about that with Joel McHale's character. And so he's taking on those traits in a moment of intense distress and dysregulation
Mhm.
because he doesn't know how else to do it. And yet we do see there are other models, you
Yes.
know, like the chef at Ever, some of the ways other people have been able to foster that community. And I think that is what he wants. And I hope he gets it somehow,
Mhm.
but he's like really like in his own way. I know I'm like a broken record, but this is such a great depiction of self-sabotage, but from like a perfectionism, anxiety,
Yeah.
complex trauma viewpoint
Mhm.
rather than, you know, like addiction or other things that we often think
Right.
of as self-sabotage or avoidant behaviors. Like overworking is a big one.
Mhm.
You know, like in our society, we sort of look at that in a more positive light, but it still gets in the way
Right. It's still
of your ability.
dysfunctional.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. And he
Yeah.
really doesn't, you know, to like slow down and just be, I think would be
Mhm.
really hard for him.
Well, he says, you know, about Claire that Claire is not chaos, she's peace. And it's almost like that was intolerable for him, like in this current state. Like he couldn't really handle like peace. I think he enjoyed parts of it, but it's like it was so interesting when he went in the walk-in. I was also thinking like, oh, temperature can be regulating, right? Going in the cold,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
maybe slowed him
Tip.
down. Tip. He thought about calling her, he didn't. I just think that that was also like I can appreciate for Claire's, like if I'm Claire's therapist or friend, like Carmi's not ready to call her. He cannot be a good partner right now, and it's right. It's
Yeah.
not like Claire's job to regulate him.
No. If
Um,
she stayed and did it, that's
right.
how codependency
Right.
kinda happens, right?
Mhm. Yeah. And then the Fack family were like
Oh,
a
he's
piece of,
weird.
like a piece of, you know, whatever. And he's like, no, peace, PEACE. And they were
See,
like,
yeah.
oh, oh, oh.
But even, like, the facts going to Claire's work to try to, like, speak on Carmi's
Mhm.
behalf, it's, like, cute, but also, like, that is the problem,
Yeah.
that he can't do it, and I was glad for her that she's not waiting around,
Mhm.
that she's, you know, like, "Listen, I'm out." I
Right.
think that's a healthy response on her end, but also I'm just sad because, like, of anyone, I feel like she really could get it, but
Mhm.
he has to learn how to find that inner peace for himself.
Yeah.
And that's gonna be hard, but it's not impossible. And
No.
he's done a lot of other hard things.
Mhm. What did you think of his, confrontation with, Joe
Oh,
McHale?
my, like, blood ran cold,
I
my
was
heart dropped to my
nervous.
butt. I was
I almost
too.
fast forwarded it just to see and then, like, rewatch it, but I didn't. I was like, "You can do this."
Same, same, right? Because I think, like also, I think that whole depiction of seeing Joel McHale God, I wish we knew what his character's name was, at, the restaurant that final night. I think it just speaks to how dysregulating it is to be around your abuser again, even when you're in a different place and you're healthy.
Mhm.
Like, it makes me think about, our patients who have to go or feel obligated to go to, like, a big family gathering at the holidays, but maybe there's
Yeah.
someone in the family who did abuse them or hurt them, and, like, it's just they really depicted well how it totally takes your attention away from everything else going on. Like, he couldn't really pay attention to the
Mhm.
amazing warm conversations happening at the table. He really couldn't take in the
No.
moment. He was really preoccupied and distracted, and you could tell how badly he wanted to say to Joel McHale the script he has rehearsed in his head probably his entire life since that point, right? To just say to him, like, "You did this to me, and I want you to know," and how utterly unfulfilling and rewarding that was, because Joel McHale just continues to gaslight and minimize and invalidate and abuse him in that moment, and you just see
Mhm.
him crumble, right?
I know.
Ah,
I mean, I wrote down and it's funny, like, how things impact different people because that other chef, the pastry one who was sitting next to Sydney, who then they are kind
mhm.
of, like, chatty, he was like, "Oh, he's a jerk," and, warning, like, I'm gonna swear a little bit. So, Carmy and them kind of go back and
Who are
forth
you
about
warning,
what they're
me?
calling him. Yeah, our listeners.
Oh, it's okay,
Um,
Portia.
so
You
he
can swear.
says, um fuckface, bastard, prick, asshole. Like, just there's kind of like going back and forth. And you can
Mhm.
see the other chef is like kind of like regulated, right? Like, he's like, yeah, he's a huge jerk, like big, douchebag, whatever. But
Mhm.
Carmi is like, you see him as someone who's abused, right? Seeing their abuser is like totally totally dysregulated, scared, like kind of it's like the pre-fight or flight. They're kind of like
Yeah,
deciding what to do. Um and he just cannot kind of regulate himself and come back to the table and know that he's safe. He definitely does not feel
yeah,
safe. And I think the other guy
yeah,
does, even though that guy was a jerk too.
yeah,
And I think that's because of Carmi's prior trauma, and maybe the other
100%.
person did not have that. It seems like he had a pretty happy home. He had a sibling. He's talking to Sydney about it.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that was
Right.
important to know. And again, we didn't need to know that. I didn't
Right,
need to
that's
know
why I love
that.
the show, right,
Yeah.
because there's all these details like that, that you're like, "Did they put that in on
Mhm.
purpose?" Like, are they trying to explore people's different reactions to trauma? Like, I
Right.
think that's, like, the whole premise of the show,
Right.
and it's masterful.
Mhm.
It is
Totally.
masterful, right? Like, we see Carmy, like, fight, like, his fight or flight response, he wants to go confront Joel McHale.
Yep.
So he does, and then we see that it just doesn't go the way he
Mm-mm.
wanted it to, and I just feel like that's gotta feel so humiliating,
Mm.
but I think, like, the work for Carmy is to realize that you're not gonna get from him
Right.
what you're wanting from him, just like you're not gonna get that from your mom or
Mhm.
Mikey or these other
Your
people,
dad.
your dad maybe, and the work is on learning to, like, validate your own experience and your own
Mhm.
reactions, and that's fucking hard, but it's possible. But I think that he's not gonna be able to move through the world and not hurt other people until he can do that
Yeah.
and really, like, take that ownership, you know?
Mhm.
So I'm real worried about him.
I know. He had a nice moment with his uncle when his
Mhm.
uncle didn't tell him that he, regardless
Has no
kind of has to
money?
close it. With his uncle really speaking to like, I wish I did more.
Yeah.
I wish I'd
Mhm.
shown up earlier. Like, and I think
Yeah.
that was sweet and spoke though to what we're assuming with all these little crumbs about how traumatizing and how hard their
How
childhood
awful it
was.
was. Yeah.
Um,
So I'm getting the sense that that uncle is that Donna's brother.
it must be.
It seems
Yeah.
like it, right? And I loved how, like, again, when uncle comes to see him, like, I think he had some bad news about the finances or something, and then he's like, "But I got some really bad news. Your mom wants you to
Oh,
come."
yeah.
I just appreciated that they're all,
Yeah.
like, addressing, like, "This is really hard," and,
And
like,
avoid
none.
and his avoidance, right? So he's like,
Yes.
"Yeah, I
He's
haven't been
so
calling her." And
avoidant.
he's like, "Well, so do you have any advice?" or whatever he asked. And he's like, "Just run, like, you just gotta do it. Like, just run full steam ahead." And I think within the context that that was I'm not saying it's good advice, but, like, I got where it was coming from. I think it's, like, helpful with, like, you can't the message being, like, don't avoid, but
Mhm.
also with you don't have to avoid, it can be a boundary instead. Like, there's a difference between avoidance and
Yes.
boundaries.
Yes, that's great, Portia. Can
Mhm.
you elaborate a little more on that
Sure.
as we
So I
start
feel
wrapping up?
like
I think that's a really important point.
boundaries to me feel ideally empowering, and it's your choice, that you are making a decision thoughtfully. That is an empowering, boundary to make with somebody that doesn't make you feel good, or a job or something like that, with
Mhm.
time. And avoidance, I think, is when you are feeling unempowered and you have no control, and you're
Mhm.
not making the choice. It feels like it's kind of happening to you. I can't handle this, so I'm not going to address it, versus I can handle my feelings, and I'm working on them, and I have these good core beliefs, and I'm
Mhm.
choosing to see this person less, or I'm choosing to
Mhm.
um, not take work home. And
Mhm.
I think I think of it as like a choice versus it
Mhm.
being kind of like overwhelming and not a choice. I don't know if that makes sense. I want to
No,
add to it.
that makes a lot of sense. No, I really like that because I think that gets really tricky,
Hmm.
especially, if you're someone like Carmi who, like, you know, did avoid for so long, and in so many ways, like, that served him,
Yes.
right? By, like, throwing himself into his work and getting out of there, that's what kept him safe and got
Right.
him out of there. But now it's not serving him anymore, and I feel like I see this all the time in my work with my patients, is learning to identify, like, what are these coping strategies you learn to implement that are no longer serving you, and how do
Hmm.
you sort of adjust them? And
Exactly.
so, yeah, like, if you have been in avoidant, whether it's through drugs and alcohol, through overworking, through not speaking, through whatever, through dissociating. We see him dissociate a lot in this
Yes.
show, less so this season, but, like, I remember in the first couple, like, with the little fire in the kitchen, and I think with the hand injury and stuff like that. Um, then to start addressing it safely, you have to have emotional and sometimes physical boundaries.
Hmm.
Um, and I think even, like, knowing that and helping someone understand that can be really empowering and make it feel safer to start opening up the box of trauma little by little. And then, they are empowered to, like, okay, now I'm going to put away for now. Like, that's enough for now. We
Yeah.
don't have to, like, dive into the deep end right away. But I think he's still, like, so scared, but he's starting. I feel like he's starting, but it's so hard.
Yeah. I know. I'm worried.
I'm very worried for him. He's unwell.
He's
That's my diagnosis.
Yeah, he's
Unwell.
definitely struggling a lot, and it was interesting how the restaurant ever closing, and them having their funeral service, seemed really triggering. Like, he
Yeah.
was already kind of walking off the into the deep end, and it's like that kind of, like, set him off. And
Yeah.
I think I'd have a lot of questions of just, like, why. I think we could, theorize, but, like, it's just interesting that that restaurant that he seemed to have a good experience in with the head chef, right? The owner. And then because I
Mhm.
was a little confused, like, did he work later with, and I looked it up, it just says Chef NYC. So,
Hmm.
I don't think we have his name of Joel McHale.
Oh, okay, you did look it up. Okay,
Yeah.
Chef NYC.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, like, so he work there separately at another time, Joel, for that woman, or and then
Maybe?
Carmi worked for him later on? Like, that's what I was, like, a little confused about.
Yeah, it seems unclear. It also, like had said, I think in our last episode, they did in this finales part of the season have a bunch of, like, legitimate, really fancy chefs. So I could also
Yes.
see, like, maybe they, like, just their community, like a
Mhm.
bunch of chefs, all came together. Whether or not they've personally worked together. But yeah, it's not clear. But I
Right.
really liked her, and like
Oh,
I would
yeah.
like her to rub off on him a little more.
Mhm. Maybe she'll, like, invest in the bear, right? She
That's what I'm
seems very
thinking.
taken with Carmy and, like, very
Would be
supportive.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Just
That would
looking
be
up.
nice. I don't want them to close,
I know. We'll see.
but I also want him to have a little more space for himself.
Mhm.
Man,
I feel
what
like
a
I wanna
ride.
rewatch it. Like, I feel
I
like I,
know.
missed some stuff, I'm sure, and just it was so
So
good. I don't
good.
wanna wait another year. I want it to be, like,
Ugh,
December.
can you just hurry up? I know. Ugh, I know. It's like I wanna rewatch it, but it was so depressing that I don't. You
Yeah.
know?
True.
Uh,
Facts.
well, thank you very much for joining us once again. Like always, we would love to hear your thoughts, your
Mhm.
comments. What are your takes? What do you think about our analyses? You can follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Analyze Scripts Podcast. In the next couple of weeks, we're going to be lightening it up. We're going to be covering A Family Affair, a fun Netflix movie, and we're going to have a very special episode with a special guest, Portia, to talk all about her experience at Taylor Swift The Eras Tour live in Dublin. So the next couple of weeks will be a little lighter.
Yeah.
So we hope you join us and
Mhm.
we'll catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.